Welcome back to The Explainer. You know, we're always trying to break down these big ideas, right? Well, today, we're getting into something huge. What really separates the successful from, well, everyone else. And I'll tell you right now, it's probably not what you're thinking.
All right, so here's what we've got on tap. First, we're going to bust a huge myth about success. Then, we'll take a look at how our own culture might be getting it wrong. After that, we'll define the real key, break it down into 4 simple parts, and then, this is the best part, we'll talk about how you can actually build it yourself.
Okay, first up, let's talk about the one thing we all think is the golden ticket to success, and that's talent.
You know, the legendary coach Vince Lombardi, he absolutely nailed it. He said the difference isn't a lack of strength or knowledge, but a lack of will. It's not about what you're born with, it's about what you're willing to do. And honestly, that idea, it really sets the stage for everything we're about to get into.
Okay, so this is where everything we think we know gets flipped on its head. We look at these people as, titans of their fields. But their beginnings? Surprisingly ordinary. I mean, Steve Jobs had a 2.65 high school GPA. Michael Jordan? He was actually cut from his varsity basketball team. And Colin Powell, a future Secretary of State, called himself a C-average student with nothing special about him. Crazy, right?
So, it really makes you wonder, right? If these absolute legends weren't just born great, what was their secret ingredient? How did they overcome such an ordinary start?
Well, the answer actually comes from some really groundbreaking research. A psychologist named Angela Duckworth found that one single characteristic was a better predictor of success than pretty much anything else. We're talking about at places like West Point, the National Spelling Bee, even in corporate sales. This one thing beat out social intelligence, good looks, physical health, and even IQ. And what was it? It was grit.
And get this, her research sometimes found that there was actually a negative correlation between a super high IQ and grit. So why would that be? Well, it's because people who are used to things coming easily to them, they often give up way faster when they're faced with a real challenge. It tells us one thing, loud and clear. Talent just isn't enough. It's only the starting point.
Okay, so if grit is so important, why don't we see more of it? Well, the answer might actually be hiding in the way we've been raised for the last few decades.
Think about it. Since the late 1960s, we've been living in the era of the self-esteem movement. And this led to a culture of, trophies for everyone and grades that just kept getting more and more inflated. You'd have students who ranked low on actual skills, but were at the top of the charts for believing they were awesome. Now, the intention was good for sure, but the result? Not so much. It's kind of been a flop.
And this quote just illustrates the backlash perfectly. There was this viral commencement speech by a teacher, David McCullough Jr., and he basically told the graduates exactly what they needed to hear. He said, "You're not special." He pointed out that we've started to love the awards more than the genuine achievement behind them, and that a fulfilling life, that's something you have to achieve. It's not just an entitlement.
And you know what? Science totally backs this up. There are studies that show praising someone's innate talent, saying things like, "You're so smart," can actually be counterproductive. It makes kids afraid to fail. But if you praise their effort instead, like saying, "Wow, you worked so hard on that," that's what builds the resilience. And that resilience is the bedrock of grit.
All right, so we've kind of torn down the myths about talent and praise. So, what's the alternative? Let's get right to it and define this central idea. What exactly is grit?
I mean, what is this kind of old-fashioned word that's suddenly making this huge comeback? Why does it seem to explain so much?
Well, here it is. Grit isn't some magical ingredient you're born with. It's simpler and also harder than that. It's passion and perseverance, specifically for your long-term goals. It's that methodical stick-to-itiveness. It's having character, not just charisma. And it's that willingness to just work relentlessly through the struggle when things get really, really tough.
Okay, but passion and perseverance, that can still feel a little abstract, right? So let's break grit down into 4 concrete ingredients, things you can actually work on. So here they are, the 4 essential parts. First, you need guts. That's the courage to just start, to take on a challenge even when it's scary. Then you need resilience, the ability to get back up after you fail. Third is initiative, which is that drive to be a self-starter, to get things moving. And finally, tenacity, that relentless focus to see a goal through to the very end, no matter how long it takes.
And if you want to understand resilience, just look at this quote from Michael Jordan. "I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." He didn't see all those missed shots and lost games as the end of the road. No way. He saw them as the foundation of his success. His failures weren't an obstacle.
They were the actual path to his success. Okay, now we get to maybe the most important part of this whole thing. Grit is not a gift. It's not something you're just born with or without. It is a skill, something you can learn and develop, and you do it especially through struggle.
And this really gets to the core of how you learn grit. See, you don't find it, you build it. And what's the main building material? It's failure. Every single setback is just an opportunity to strengthen that resilience muscle.
There's this short story that just illustrates this process perfectly. For 2 years, a father held onto his daughter's bike seat, and for 2 whole years, she just kept falling. Then one day, a stranger tells him, "You gotta let go." So he does. The girl falls, she gets up, she falls again, and then she's riding. The lesson here is so clear. When you protect someone from failure, you also protect them from learning. The moment that safety net was gone, that's when real learning and real grit began. So how can you start building grit, like today? Here are 2 really simple, actionable things you can do. First, give grit to others. What does that mean? It means don't just redo a report for a colleague, show them how to make it better. Let your kids learn to do things for themselves. Let people struggle a little. And second, for yourself, just do your to-do list. Commit for 1 month to finishing every single project on your list, no matter how small. This proves to your brain that your abilities aren't fixed, they can be developed. Ultimately, what this all does is it shifts the power right back to you. See, success isn't about luck or being born with some magical talent. It's a choice. It's a choice to persevere. So, the only real question left is, are you willing to build it?